Hello, in this video we will have a look at stored procedures, what they are and how they can be created and how they can be used. A stored procedure allows us to use some programming elements together with SQL, and it's approximately the same principle as when we create a method in a programming language, for instance C#. Here we make a procedure which is stored on the database server. And when we call it, it is also run on or executed on the database server. We can also use parameters to give inputs to the procedure, so that makes them very flexible. Most database management systems offers some kind of programming language, and most of them have some kind of stored procedure functionality. If you prefix a stored procedure, Microsoft advises you not to use SP as the prefix. That is to avoid any conflicts with procedures in the master database. I prefer USP, user-defined stored procedures, which is commonly used. Let us compare the use of a stored procedure to the use of a method in C#. Here we have a C# method, void set alarm. When this method is called, it will set the back color of a text box named txt_alarm to the color red. It has no parameters, so it will always just set the color to red. If we then would reset the color to something else, then we had to make another method for that purpose. But instead, we could have made the method with a parameter so that we could both set and reset the alarm. Then we could use color.red as argument when we wanted to set the alarm, and we could use another color when we wanted to reset it. In the same manner, we can make a stored procedure with or without parameters. Here we have an example of a stored procedure. We use a create procedure as a statement, and then we specify a procedure name. This one is going to calculate an average of all the prices, so I call it USP get average price. Earlier we made a similar query that did this, but instead of having to write this query and run it every time we need to calculate the average price, I will make it as a stored procedure, and then I can call this stored procedure every time I need to calculate the average. And to run or execute this stored procedure on the SQL server, we write exec and the name of the stored procedure. We will try this in SQL Server. First I write my query, and then we select it and execute it. We go to Object Explorer and we'll find our stored procedures under Programmability. There we have a folder named Stored Procedures. So if I open this one, I will not see anything. As before, we have to refresh with the F5 button, and then I will see my stored procedure. And also here we can right click on it and modify it if we need that. I want to execute it to test it. So we write exec and the name of the stored procedure. And this will use the car owner database, and it will calculate all the prices in the column named price and calculate the average from the table named car. And it should format the result to currency and Norwegian format. We select this one and execute. And now I see my calculated average price down here. This is how we can use stored procedures. Now we want to create a stored procedure with some parameters to be used to insert some values into the postal address table. So we start by writing create procedure and the name of the procedure. I name it USP, insert into postal address. And I will define two parameters, at postal code and at city. So we use this at sign to specify that this is a parameter, and we then specify the data type. Now I have declared two parameters. And then we come to the definition part, defined by this keyword, and I start my query. Insert into postal address, and I specify the two columns I want to insert values into. When we are inserting into all the tables columns, we don't have to specify this, but it's not wrong either, so I specify it. And then the values that we are inserting into these two columns, and that is the values from the parameter, that is at postal code and at city. That is our procedure. And to call it, we write exec and the name of it, and we specify the parameters. First at postal code, and we give it specify a value, and then comma, and at city, and then the next value. So now we will try this in SQL Server against our car owner database. I go to SQL Server, and the first thing I have to do is to create the procedure. So I run this code execute. Then I go to Object Explorer and Stored Procedures and click the F5 button to refresh. And then I will see this procedure is created and stored. And we will test it with this execute command or exec command. And I will insert postal code 0000 so that it will be easy to find at the top of the list because there are so many postal addresses registered. And the city, Xanadu. So we run this one and then it will call the procedure and it will put these values 0000 and Xanadu into these parameters, and the procedure will insert into postal address these two values. So we execute, one row affected, and now we can write a query to see the result. I will select all from postal address. So I run this one, and then at the top of the list I will find postal code 0000 and the city Xanadu. This row is inserted by calling the stored procedure USP insert into postal address with these values as arguments. As a last example, we will create a stored procedure that inserts some values into the car table. And we will use two parameters, at reg number and at car make, specify the data types for each of them. And we name the stored procedure USP insert into car. In the definition part, we specify the insert into statement, and we will insert into the table named car. Here we will only insert into two of the columns, and then we have to specify the name of them, reg number and car make. And the values we want to insert into these columns is the parameter values, at reg number and at car make. And when we have stored it as a procedure, then we can test it by running it. So exec USP insert into car, and we give some values to the parameters. We go to SQL Server to perform it. And we run this create procedure query so that this procedure is created and stored. I go to execute, completed successfully. I can go to stored procedures and click the F5 button to refresh, and then I see that it is created and stored. Then we will test it by inserting a row with these data. We execute this one row is affected, and then we can run select all from car to see how it has affected this content. And here I will find as the first row AB12345 Ferrari. And we see that it has null values in these three columns, and it has unknown, which was specified as the default value when we created the table. So only those two values are inserted from the procedure. That worked fine.